everybody. Welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to talk about The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This review is going to be a little bit about the movie, a little bit about the book, kind of comparing and contrasting what did the movie do good versus what did the book really do really well. Hunger Games, if you do not know, is about a society where the world is separated into 12 districts. Every year they pick 2 kids from each district, one boy and one girl, to fight in the Hunger Games to the death. Now, what I like about Suzanne Collins needs to write adult. We need this type of writing, this type of energy in adult, because what I liked about the book until we got to the games portion of it, the games portion kind of lingered a little bit. And I'm going to talk about that in when we get to kind of some of the movie perks, is that her writing is fantastic. She knows how to pace a story really well. We as readers do not have to wait for the picking of the who's in District 12. We know who Katniss is in probably the first 2 chapters of this book, and I've never been introduced to a character, understood a character as much as I do in Katniss within the first 2 chapters of this book. You're going from her talking to, oh my goodness, what is his name? Not Prime Buttercup. Gale. You set up their relationship and who Katniss is really, really quickly, and you set up who Katniss is as a person. Because once, the famous scene where Katniss raises her hand and says, "I'm going to volunteer," is in the 2nd chapter of this book. So we don't have to really wait to see that Katniss is the hero. She will sacrifice anything for her family. She does not think her sister, why can I not remember people's names, guys? Sorry. Prim is not ready to go into these games. And, so she volunteers because she knows how to hunt. She knows how to somewhat fight, and she knows how to survive. Prim is a little too young to understand that, and I think if we were to if Prim was the main character, it would be she would have been dead. Would be my prediction. Now, Haymitch, which is their mentor, later on could have fallen in love with her as much as he falls in love with Katniss. So there is a possibility she could have survived. Katniss just seems like she knows how to survive already. So you have a character that's already perfect for the games, created for these games. And the Hunger Games is a symbolism of how we watch reality TV. That's exactly what it is. It's a reality TV show. You want to cheer for people, and you also want people to be murdered. So when it comes to somebody like Katniss, I think in a lot of ways she is the people's hope. She is a symbol of it. So what I think, seeing the dress come to life in the movie was fantastic, by the way. But what the movie is a lot slower to get going. I felt I feel like the famous I volunteer scenes 20-30 minutes within the movie where, I mean, I know you read a book a lot quicker sometimes than, movies, but I felt like I got to that scene like in 2 seconds. Um, Plus, I guess you have to put credits and all that stuff, but um, I love that she gets to a point. Like, I feel like with the way books are going, that the idea of pacing is like you can just stuff anything in there and, you know, somebody will read it, where this is paced really well. And then something I like about the book is you get to really feel Katniss as a character. Like, by the end of this first book, I knew where she was mentally from the beginning to end. So I knew when she won the games, like, I knew how she felt. And I think the actress, I can't remember her name right now, she does a good job. She's very, to me, she's a lot more cold than what Katniss's inner dialogue is giving out. Like, I think she has warmer feelings towards Peeta. And I'm gonna get kind of to him in a second. I didn't like him. I didn't like him in the movies. I did not like him in the book. Like, I think they translate it very well in both. I think this, something I didn't like about the book is that they really pushed the romance a little bit more, especially in the scene in the cave. Is not, I think that might still be in the movie, but I don't remember it. It must be really fast because I don't remember it. I did not watch the movie prior to doing this. I just am talking about my feelings that I have with the movie, and then how the book kind of amplifies it a little bit, or what the movie did better. I I liked Haymitch. See, the treatment between for Haymitch, to me in the movie, like, they respected him more. Even though he was a drunk, they respected him more because that drunk is going to protect you. That drunk is going to make sure that you survive through these games. He already has been through this. He knows what he's doing. And then I think there's like an understanding at the end, especially with Katniss and like all her PTSD, why Haymitch is like that. Um and there's a scene that's like not really in the books, I mean in the movie, where she is a little worried about her family. Like, she is like, what are they going to do with my family? Um and there's like an intense um way that they push that more in the books. I think that should have been more pushed in the movies. Like, and I think with the new book coming out, which is through Haymitch's Hunger Games, we're gonna see that a little bit more played out. Like, why is she so worried about that? And that would have been something a little bit more fun to explore, but at the same time, this is called the Hunger Games. Like, the main point of this book is the games themselves. Um, and I think the author does a really good job of showing Katniss's snark. That scene where she points the arrow directly at the game makers, and it's like, "Hi, I'm here. Like, pay attention to me." Like, was perfect. It's perfect in the book. It's perfect in the movies. Um, and that's also the scene where she's like worried about her family. Haymitch is like, well, it's too late. Like, they've already picked, like, you're already here. They're not going to destroy that. The games are too important. Um, so that was something I really liked about this, like, how they translated everything. Um, And I think you see a lot better of a relationship between Katniss and Haymitch in the book than you do in the movie. I think they do grow to like each other. And I feel like this is the part where I'm glad that they made these into movies, is the games themselves. The games themselves in the books are fine, but they do linger. I think the movies did such a good job pulling the parts that we wanted to see as readers and just translating it and cutting it into a smaller section, because and I think if you watch my Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I talk about this too. It's she's so visual, like you can see them like in the arena doing the games, but actually seeing it, seeing the only the important scenes, having it cut down really helped with the pacing when it came to that point. So to me, the book had really good pacing up to the games, and then we kind of, once the games are over, the pacing got better again. So, and that would make me sound like, okay, like, how did that affect your reading experience? I wasn't, see, it didn't ruin my reading experience. Um, do I feel like it should have been like shorter, like a little bit tighter of pacing? Yes. Um, but at the same time, there's a lot more emotions that we're getting from this, from reading the games instead of watching them on a movie. Even though you get facial expressions from actors and stuff, it does not, it doesn't pull at the heartstrings as much as like hearing the inner dialogue. Like, how could I have done this better? And that's kind of what's going through Katniss's mind when the little girl that's in the net gets shot. Like, I shouldn't have let her die. Now, there's this whole thing that we could talk about. Like, obviously, it had to be Katniss and it had to be Peeta because she wasn't going to let Peeta die. So, that somehow, some way, that little girl was gonna have to die eventually. If it was by Katniss's hands, Peeta's hands, or maybe the game makers would have just killed her off. Um, so having it to where just one of the players kills her off is actually more of like a mercy than probably what the game makers would have created for her death. Because I think the game makers, sorry guys, for entertainment purposes, really wanted Katniss and Peeta to live because it would have brought in the ratings. And then it would have brought in the ratings for, the in-show interviews and how, and then Peeta does this whole confessional speech thing that I'm like, I do believe that that Peeta is infatuated with Katniss. I don't think Katniss feels the same way at all. The only Now, like, we can get into the whole Gale and Katniss and Peeta like discussion. I haven't read all three books, so I don't want to like actually say who. In some ways, I feel like no one. Like, I think after the game, she's so destroyed that I just think she needs some time. And you know, I watched Katie's review on the Hunger Games. Katie I'll link her channel. I'll link actually her video because she talks about all three books. I think her review is actually really good. But she talks about how Katniss could be asexual. And I do agree to the extent of maybe she wasn't, like, I think she's opening up to that factor. Like, I think with the situation at hand, I think it's opening her up to, I'm just trying to survive here. I'm not really into you, but I will play into the illusion that I'm into you. And I think that's the whole thing. Like, I don't really think she's really into anybody. That's just like my whole thing. Now, it could be a situation where It's survival, and she just doesn't have time for that. Um, and that could be something that's explored later on. Um, Now, obviously, in the movies, we can't explore stuff like that, especially when this book came out, which was in like the 2012s. You had to couple up. Like, that was just how things worked. And even in the book, like, you know that she's going to end up with somebody just because it's a YA book of this time period. If it was now, like, she could have left both men to rot. Like, and we would have just been like, oh, okay, whatever. Um, and we did love our love triangles at that time. But I think with all the PTSD that I I know because I've watched all the movies, so I kind of know what happens at the end. But you really do see the start of it in this book. Like, she's like going through the whole thing, like, I killed my first man. Like, and then how does that affect you? Like, are you going to get over that, or are you going to linger on it for the rest of your life? And in this world, like, you can tell, like, they don't have like a therapist that they can go talk to because Hamish is over there drinking and like still like all up in his sorrows over what happened in his games. So you can tell that these people are not psychologically well, which obviously you wouldn't be. You were thrown in like pretty much a whole arena full of people that wanted to kill you. You wanted to kill them just to survive. And like you're starved for the most part. There's probably a lot of diseases and stuff like that. So sorry. So mentally going through all that and then having to go back into society and being like, well, yes, I did help my family out. And I think at the end of the day, like, that's the thing. That's the thing about the Hunger Games is that these adults are sending these children, like, which makes it more like these games are actually done in such a genius way because, like, you're on your edge of your seat. Like, you're gonna feel for kids more than you're gonna feel for adults. It's just kind of the way that it is. So it's actually genius, well done. Not saying I want to go into this society or anything. Not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying, like, if there was actually like it's there's a genius behind this, and like kind of seeing like how the games began and back when we were like if you think about this in the order of like timeline wise instead of book release wise. So like let's say, because this is how I ended up reading it. Sorry guys. Um you have Songbirds and Snakes at the beginning. So you're seeing how these games are created. And you're seeing more of the inner workings of the games themselves. And then you're seeing somebody down the line that's against the government and how they fight against these games. So you're seeing the rise of a society and kind of a fall of a society. Because if they don't have these games, they're falling as a society. This is all that Pan Am has, is these games. Otherwise, I guess they have nothing because we really, I mean, based off of Songbirds and Snakes, like even like the rich were having issues surviving as much as the poor were. Um Now that was, sorry guys. That was, I mean, we were watching it from the young President Snow's view. His family gets kicked out. But like you're seeing like that rise and how that country, like how this got, how what like why we have the games and the rise of that. And then now you're seeing somebody go against that. And we can talk about why President Snow probably hates Katniss now that we have his backstory. Now there's a lot left interpretation of what happened to, I can't remember her name, but what happened to the love interest of President Snow. There is a lot of interpretation. She does not, well, I'll I'll stop there. I don't want to spoil it. We're only talking about the Hunger Games. But when we're talking about that and like the comparisons that people have been making, like now we get it. This is one thing that both the movie and the book do not do very well, is explain that, and that's why I feel like we needed that book. Now, was the book too long? I was reading the book before I read this. So I was reading the Songbirds and Snakes book before I read the Hunger Games. I'm like, why do we really need, minus the fact that he was such an interesting character. How he got his tribute through the games was really interesting. What he did, sorry, and what he did for like the creation and what that group of kids that were mentors to these tributes did to the games and changed it. And like, the food system and all that stuff, how that was interesting as somebody that's watched the movies. But it shouldn't have been needed because we should have had, I think they needed to do a little bit of background on some of the older characters. Because now we're having to have Haymitch's story because we don't get them. I feel like he hints at some things that happened during the games, but not in detail enough where, sorry guys, as a reader, like you really get him. And that's what I think. I mean, I can't down either source for focusing on Katniss. She's the main character, but it would be interesting to see parallels between Haymitch as a tribute and then Katniss as a tribute, and how like they're able to maybe survive with that guilt that they have at the end of the games, and how that might have bonded them more. Because I think, if I remember right, Haymitch is in some of the other books and the movies. So having that relationship, sorry guys, explored a little bit more would have enhanced these books so much. Now I don't know if Susanna Collins was planning on all those other books. Like, I don't know if she was planning on doing a backstory of Snow. I don't know if she was planning on doing a backstory of Haymitch. Um, I don't. What I don't want is, I don't want her to write a fourth book of this. Like, I think 3 books is enough. We know where Katniss ends at the end because like I said, I've seen the movies, so I have a pretty good idea. Unless the books are really different. Sorry, guys. Um. So yeah, that's how I feel. I am thinking like a 4-star. Like, even with the games being slow, I think this is a neat piece of literature. And I think, like, this is something like, you can break the hierarchy. Like, not everything has to be so, like, against its people. Like, you can fight for change and everything. And that's really what Katniss stands for in the other books. Sorry guys. She's a fighter for that change, and I think it ends up destroying her at the end mentally. But I also think that how it starts and how it ends is kind of interesting in a lot of ways. I think I might talk about the next two books. If it's gonna be a slow series because I'm just gonna get these books from the library. I'm not going to buy them or anything like that. But I think I will probably continue talking about how these movies represent what a good taking from a source material looks like when it comes to movie making and stuff like that. Um, and I'm really interested in that concept. But anyways, like and subscribe. I will be back with a video real soon. Bye guys.